Wife leaves me for her ex. Hey, Ron, why didn't you say anything to me about moving? I thought we were best friends, man, Alan Rynearson said to me on the phone when I was already in the office this morning. What? What are you talking about? I asked my best friend and closest neighbor, next to whom we had lived for 10 years. What makes you think I'm moving? I see, because of the van in your driveway and the fact that your furniture is being moved into it, he said in an annoyed tone. It was probably a good thing I was already sitting down when I answered the phone. I felt dizzy. My head suddenly felt like I'd been drinking heavily. Have you seen Lori anywhere? People just taking stuff out of my house? Seriously? I know that sounded lame because I was not myself at the time. Yes, brother. She's in charge, he replied. So far, I'd seen most of the furniture from the bedroom and living room being loaded into the van. Alan often worked as a forensic accountant from home. He was a solid, seasoned guy, not prone to quirks. What he was telling me didn't sound good. I have no idea what's going on, man. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Thanks for the call, I said, rising from my chair. Running into my boss's office, I told him that I had some serious personal problems at home and that I had to leave. He told me to go and keep him informed. 14 minutes later, I know this because I looked it up, I pulled up in front of my house. I couldn't pull into my driveway because there was a van parked there. Forget about the strange car in my driveway. It was a van. I know I braked noisily in front of the house. I jumped out of the car and ran into the house through the open front door. What a mess! I yelled at the two guys who were carrying my living room couch to the door I was standing at. Dude, stop yelling and get out of our way, said the big guy who was carrying the back of the couch. Ilayen number, put that couch down and get out. Now! Both guys pushed the couch back and looked at me in disgust. So you're obviously the loser husband your wife told us about, although she didn't think you'd be home so early, the big guy said. Buddy, and get out of my house. Nothing from that damn truck better be out of here. He raised his hands in a universal gesture of surrender just as my wife of 15 years entered the room. Ronnie, I didn't expect you home so soon, but it's no big deal. Guys, keep loading what I told you to load, Lori said. The two guys lifted the couch again. I ran past them, went up to my bedroom, and got my gun out of the gun safe. The two men loaded the couch into the truck and were on their way in the door when I came downstairs, pointing the gun at them. They both raised their hands, and the smaller one literally peed his pants as he let out some sort of squeak. My wife's eyes widened in horror. Face down on the ground, both of you, I shouted. March to them, I said to my wife, who started shaking and quickly crossed the room. I pulled my cell phone out of my pocket, holding them at gunpoint, dialed 911, and told the voice on the other end of the line that my wife and the two movers were stealing the contents of my house, and I had them on the floor with the gun pointed at them. Please remain calm, sir, and don't do anything stupid. The police will be at your house in a few minutes, said a young female voice. We will wait here. Calmly, I said to the voice before hanging up. Everyone stay calm like I said to the three people lying face down on the floor. Ronnie, please calm down. There's no reason to shoot anybody. My crying wife literally screamed. I'm not going to shoot anybody, as long as you're lying down, I said, much quieter than I had been up to that point. I saw the big man lift his head off the floor and perhaps maybe decided to do something more stupid. You! I can see you're thinking about doing something about it, but I wouldn't advise it, I told the guy. The cops will be here in just a few minutes. But if you insist, I'll give you a briefing and I won't lose a minute of sleep over it. Ask my wife. I don't often question myself about the decisions I make. He ducked his face to the floor again. That's smart, I said. While we're waiting, why don't you explain to me what's going on here, Lori? I'm leaving you, Ronnie, Lori said. I'm taking some of the furniture and things I need out of the house. There's nothing wrong with that, so I want my half, including the furniture and stuff. I left you the master bedroom, but I took the furniture from the guest room. I'm going to take the living room, but I'm leaving you the family room. I'm going to move all my stuff, half my jewelry and stuff. You're going to take the kids, but I still want to be able to see them anytime I want. I'll just be on the other side of town." I kept aiming at the big guy while my stomach did somersaults. Admittedly, I never saw this coming, and I had no idea she would leave me. However, I wasn't born yesterday, so I knew she wasn't leaving me to live alone. "And who would replace me?" I asked, trying my best not to sound pathetic. "Caleb. Caleb Primer, the man I dated right before you and I started dating," she said. I glared at my wife in silence for a few seconds. "You mean the man who broke off your engagement to go off to the left coast with another woman? His other half? The woman he later married?" She blushed thickly, sitting on the floor. She was about to answer when two policemen appeared in the doorway, pointing their pistols at me. "Drop your weapon, sir. Put it down slowly and carefully," said the older of the two. I immediately followed his instructions, but tried to proceed slowly and deliberately. I in no way wanted to be victimized by a policeman. As soon as the police took my gun, we each told the policemen our stories. Apparently, my wife was moving into an apartment with her ex-fiancé, who had recently moved back to town after divorcing his wife. My wife decided that her true love was him, not me, and she would leave me for him. "When we got married, I couldn't have found a better man than you, but Caleb has always been my number one. And if he's available, well, I have to do what I think is right for me," she said. Wait a minute," I yelled in a way that must have made the veins in my neck swell. "Are you saying I was just a substitute? I'm a good person, but he's better? I'm number 2, and he's number 1? Her face was practically purple in color. She was looking anywhere but directly at me. Finally, she nodded slowly. "You're a fool. You're an absolute fool," I growled. After a few seconds of awkward silence, Lori asked the cops if she could take the rest of the stuff she wanted and leave. I reminded them that ownership was 9/10 of the law, so the furniture that belonged to both of us had to stay in the house. "That is exactly the policy of our city attorney," said the senior police officer. "You two need to bring the furniture from the van back into the house. Nothing that is common property is to leave the house until a judge authorizes it, or both owners agree to it. Mrs. Sanders can take all her clothes, toiletries, and anything that belongs to her alone, including jewelry. The policeman remained in the house until all the furniture was put back in its place. Lori then loaded some suitcases into her car, and she and 2 movers drove off. The police then returned the unloaded gun to me. After putting the gun back in the safe, I called Alan and told him what had happened, thanking him for the warning. I then went to my favorite hardware store and changed all 3 door locks and the code on the garage. The only way Lori could get into the house was if I let her in. My kids came home from school a few hours later, and it almost broke my heart when I told them that their mother had gone to live with another man and that we were going to be divorced in the near future. My daughters are 12 and 10 years old enough to understand what divorce is. Several of their friends' parents have split up, but they couldn't understand why their mother would just walk out on us. I had to admit that I'm not entirely clear on the concept at this point either, but I hope to figure it out in the near future. "You must have screwed up big time, Daddy. For Mom to be so mad that she left you for another man," said our oldest, Karen. "Did you cheat on her or something? Did you forget her birthday?" My feelings were incredibly hurt by Karen's accusations. I didn't leave my spouse and children to be with another man. "From what she said, the problem isn't me or even me and her. I'm sure it's her personal problem," I stated emphatically. Both girls looked at me and saw that I was struggling to keep my cool. I noticed the look of pity on their young faces before their selfish interests manifested themselves almost simultaneously. "Are we going to stay home with you, or will Mommy take us to wherever she lives?" the youngest, Susie, asked. "Are we going to have to move or something? What's our plan of action, Daddy?" I didn't like it when my daughters questioned me, especially since I'd noticed that they seemed to think I was to blame for the breakup of the relationship. "Right now, you two are staying in the house with me," I replied gruffly. "And then we'll see." Maybe when Mom has time between kisses with her new boyfriend, she and I can talk." The kids looked shocked and aghast at the mention of kissing and boyfriends. At least they guessed it had something to do with their mother doing things that probably wouldn't pass the wife and mother test. After a few seconds of silence, Susie challenged. "Why don't you call her right now and get her here so we can talk?" Susie ordered. "We? Who's we?" "When I bring her up here to talk, you'll be upstairs. There are certain things that should only remain between husband and wife. When we're done with her, I'll call you two in, and then you can spend some time with her." They nodded in agreement and continued to look at me. Finally, Karen said quietly, "Now, Dad, call her." I flinched, but thought she was probably right. I dialed my wife's number and put the call on speakerphone. "We're on speakerphone," I said when I heard her pick up. "Speak clearly and acceptably." "Okay," Lori finally answered. "Are the girls in the room with you?" "Yes. They insisted that I call you right now and set up a time for you to come here and talk to us. We'll talk to you and me first, and then you and them. They want it to happen as soon as possible. I can order pizza delivery and we can have dinner after we talk. If one of us is hungry by then." We heard her swallow with difficulty. "Okay. I'll be there in 15 minutes, she said in a hoarse voice, almost a whisper. When her car pulled up, I asked one of the girls to let her in since her key wouldn't open the new locks. Karen hugged her mother tightly as Lori entered the house. Susie ran up to her and did the same. Lori looked at me, guilt reflected on her face as she hugged Susie. "You're not going to pull a gun on me again, are you?" Lori asked meekly. There was a look of shock on the girls' faces before they turned and stared at me. "It's a long story. I'll tell you later," I told them. "Not this time. Unless you try to steal something again." This time, the girls stared at Lori. She was clearly feeling out of place. "Okay, you two need to go upstairs and lock your doors," I said. "We'll let you know when it's your turn to talk." As soon as the girls closed the doors to their room, Lori jumped to her feet. "How dare you threaten me with a gun? I live in this house too, and I don't like that kind of threat," she growled sharply. "Well, I'm sorry," I responded just as sharply. "I don't come home to find the trite phrase, strange car in the driveway. I come home to find the non-trite phrase, strange moving van in the driveway, and I find two assholes stealing furniture. Then I discover that my supposedly loving wife is directing them. You three are lucky I only threatened to shoot you. You do remember that I've won several shooting competitions in the past. You three would have been dead long before the police arrived." She instantly turned pale as my statement reached her consciousness. "What is going on? And why did you try to steal the furniture, you stupid cheater? All you've told me is that you're leaving me for the man who was once your fiancé." She swallowed hard and sat down on the edge of the living room couch. I could see that she was trembling. "Can I have a glass of water, Ronnie? I can fetch it myself if you'll let me." I made a broad gesture toward the kitchen in agreement, sat down on the nearest chair, and waited. Soon she came back. "Remember when I told you I was engaged before we met? Was his name Caleb Primer?" she asked uncertainly. "Yes. You two were together for a couple years before you got engaged. You said he broke off the engagement and went to California with another woman whom he later married. Long story short, you were devastated and didn't see anyone else for a year. And then you met me. And the rest is history," I said. "How did we get to the point where you left me for him and tried to steal the furniture?" "I really, really loved Caleb. I thought he was my soulmate, and we were going to be together for the rest of our lives," she began. "When he broke off the engagement, I was devastated, but I still loved him deeply. In fact, I never got over him." "That's it?" I interjected weakly, suddenly realizing where this was going. "Yes, I got involved with you, and we fell in love. But honestly, I always kept most of my heart in reserve, in the crazy hope that he'd come back to me someday. When you asked me to marry you after we'd been together for a year, I realized that I would never find a better man to marry if I couldn't be married to Caleb. You were handsome, funny, witty, intelligent, kind, and had a bright future. To me, you were the perfect man, along with Caleb. And I do love you, and we had a wonderful life together. But my heart never let go of Caleb. There was always that little spark of hope that one day he'd come back to me. I felt like I had been punched in the gut by Mike Tyson and Tyson Fury in the same person. I was seriously considering throwing up from everything I had eaten in the past week. I felt tears running down my cheeks. So I was always second place in your heart? I was just a front man all this time? I squeaked pitifully, even to my own ears. Ilian number, you weren't a substitute. I never thought he'd actually ever come back, so I gave you all my love. Except for the big part you saved for him, I interrupted. You said so yourself, Lori. I was just a substitute, even if you didn't admit it to yourself. And I was always second best. You haven't found a better man than me, unless you count Caleb. She lowered her eyes and confirmed my thoughts. How did it go from an almost unattainable dream to you leaving me for him? When did he come back here? When did you two start dating again? She blushed again. How do you know? She started hesitantly. I'm not an idiot, though I'm not particularly observant, I said. All of a sudden you steal furniture and leave me? You've already had sex with him, realized you're still right for each other, and now you're leaving me and the kids for this asshole. How long has he been back? How long have you been together? Do you have to be so rude? Do you? Really? You lied to me the whole time we were married. Now you've added sex with another man to your list of crimes. And you're upset because I'm talking to you the way you deserve? Delusion. So, Lori. How long? She exhaled loudly, took a big sip of water, and exhaled again. She stammered, then stammered again. 2 months. A few times a week, she whispered. Stupid cheater. Her eyes filled with tears. There was a time when I would have wrapped my arms around her. Now I had to muster all my strength not to beat the crap out of her. I'm sorry, Ronnie. I really am. I never really thought I had a chance to get him back, she said. But don't you regret lying to me for 15 years? Keeping me from finding someone to be number one for. I deserve to be number one to someone, just like you've always been number one to me. If it wasn't for the kids, I'd say I wasted 15 years of my life. We spent the next few minutes discussing how she tried to steal furniture from the house and sneak out without even telling me. She admitted that she thought she could take half the furniture since we were living in a no-fault state, and she wanted something comforting from her now old life. We also discussed the possibility of seeing the girls. I told her that she could see them as much as she wanted, as long as Caleb didn't object. I also warned that Caleb better never molest any of the daughters, or I wouldn't hesitate to go to jail for shooting him. She assured me that he was not that kind of man. I countered that since he was the kind of man who had no problem sleeping with another man's wife, I thought he was capable of it. She growled at me. With my right hand, I mimed a gun. She turned pale. When we were done, I called our daughters downstairs. The girls asked me to leave the room so they could have a three-way conversation. I was uncomfortable with this request, but I had always respected their privacy in the past, so I figured I should allow it. I went upstairs to the bedroom that used to belong to Lori and I, but would now belong to me alone. Lori had taken all of her clothes and other things even earlier. I plopped down on the bed and realized how tiring my day had been. I figured that every day would be the same now. I think in the next few minutes, I had experienced almost all the wonderful moments of my and Lori's life, from our first date to our first sex together, my marriage proposal, our wedding, the birth of our 2 girls, several wonderful anniversaries. Now it's all tainted by my wife's infidelity and her leaving. My sadness turned to rage when I thought of all the deception that had gone on for over 15 years. Maybe I should have just shot her when I had the chance. As I lay on my bed, Seething with anger, a sickening thought crossed my mind. How many other people knew I was just deceived? How many of her family members and close friends knew she was just using me as a sucker until her Prince Charming reappeared? Who else knows that she's been giving me horns for 2 months now after he came back? Deceived, screwed over, and humiliated. That's great. After Lori talked to the kids and went home, the girls and I sat in the living room discussing what had happened and what their mother had told them. I was stunned when they both acted like Lori's act was incredibly romantic. He's like a knight in shining armor coming back to save her, Karen marveled. No, wait, am I the villain? She didn't need to be rescued from me, I pointed out, but the giggling girls let that pass. We loved each other. We had a beautiful marriage until her ex-fiancé came back into her life and ruined our marriage. They looked at me in horror. He loves her, Dad. She loves him. They found each other again after more than 15 years. You can't stand in the way of true love, Daddy, Susie said. I was outraged. Not that I wasn't going to divorce that crazy, cheating woman, but the fact that my daughters had just set me up to be screwed over. They didn't care that my world was falling apart. They wanted their mother to have a great romantic adventure with her ex-fiancé. Would you mind if your mother divorced me and married this guy? I didn't try to hide my disappointment. It's not like she's going to move to another country or anything, Dad. She's just going to be on the other side of town, Karen replied. It's not like no one's ever gotten divorced. And once they get settled, I'm sure we'll be able to see them whenever we want. And what I want doesn't matter to you. As long as you have everything, it's okay? Is that what you're saying? They looked at me as if I were an innocent child, then looked back at me with smirks on their faces. You're a handsome guy, Dad. I'm sure it won't take you long to have a babe of your own for sex. And maybe love, Karen said. You're going to divorce her anyway. She cheated on you, and even Susan and I know you won't get over it. Just relax and let her enjoy her affair. Uh-huh. Never mind that she destroyed our family, lied to me, cheated on me, basically made me waste 15 years of my life and cheated on me. Don't I have a right? The right to ruin her romantic parade a little bit? You do realize I got her pregnant. I loved her, girls. I loved her with my whole being, with everything I had. She broke the vows she made to me. We were supposed to love, honor, and cherish each other until the end of time and forget about everyone else. But she always kept her heart for him. He was the first, and I was the second. The girls seemed confused. If I expected them to comfort me, well, I was wrong. The following week, I was served with divorce papers. I'm not surprised. She just wanted her half. Fair enough. I'm numb. I found out that her family and her best friend Janet knew about Caleb coming back into her life and into her bed. My mother-in-law had the same attitude as my girls. When one day at lunch she started making poetic comments about this guy, I decided I'd had enough and lashed out at her. How could you let her marry me if she didn't love me? You knew she still loved him. Which means I'll never be number one. Why didn't you at least tell me that? And let me make my decision. I knew you were a good man, would take care of her and give her children, and she did love you. Just not as much as Caleb, she said. If he hadn't come back into her life, you'd always think she loved you. She really did love you. She really does love you. It's just that he'll always be number one in her heart. And why shouldn't she have everything and anything her heart desires? You stupid fool. I started before her husband, my father-in-law, interrupted me. Don't you ever talk to my wife like that, he said angrily, getting up. My father-in-law and I are about the same height, but I'm 25 years younger, and rage was on my side. I stood up too and moved towards him, clenching my fists. Do you really want to get nailed right here in the restaurant because your wife is a stupid fool and the daughter you both raised is a stupid cheater? We stood almost face to face before a very nervous manager came up and asked us not to do anything stupid in his restaurant. At that point, I came back to earth, threw enough money on the table to pay the bill, and walked out. I didn't need their continued friendship anyway. I hadn't seen Lori's Prince Charming during the divorce, so when I finally saw him at a restaurant one night after the divorce was finalized, I was definitely not thrilled. Lori had described him as tall, dark-haired, and handsome, and maybe 15 years ago he had been. But he was far from that now. He was only an inch taller than me, he was 30 pounds overweight, and his face looked like he'd had more than enough to drink. I had to admit I was even more depressed. If she had left me for Chris Hemsworth or someone like that, maybe I would have understood it. But leaving me for an unassuming guy like him? I was really insulted, especially when my girls kept calling him her knight in shining armor. Really? I noticed Lori and Caleb sitting at a table, but pretended not to see them and walked away. I don't know if Lori noticed me, but to tell you the truth, I didn't care. At least she wasn't alone. I, as has now become the norm, was alone. Lori had completely destroyed my trust in women, and I had no desire to seek out female companionship, though in many cases it sought me out on its own. Several unmarried women I knew had learned of my divorce and called to offer their condolences and express their availability. I thanked them and explained that when I was ready to start dating, I would be sure to call them. I even made a list of these women to set up a date with. Help came to me from the person I least expected, my older sister Danica. Danica was 3 years older than me, and while we were growing up, she made my life hell. Then, when she was about 18, she finally became a person. But about 6 months after we finally developed a good relationship, she left to go to college. She was never thrilled that I had chosen Lori to be my wife. Privately, she always told me that I could have found a better match, but never did anything to hurt my marriage or humiliate my wife publicly. Danica knew that Lori had broken my heart, so she was cool with criticizing this cheating woman in my presence. And it made me feel good to know that she had my back. About 2 years after my divorce was finalized, Danica called me and asked me for a favor. Unbeknownst to me, I agreed. After all, she is my sister. The favor turned out to be a date with her friend Sybil, who had been divorced for a year and was too shy to ask a man out. Sybil, in her 40s, was 3 years older than me. She wasn't a dazzling beauty, but she was still a solid 7 on a 10-point visual scale, and she had a rounded shape. She also had brains, and could talk about a lot of things, because my sister knew I'd kill her if she set me up with a brainless girl. The date went well. Okay, really good, even though we didn't end up in bed. We visited a photo exhibit at a local museum, and then had dinner at a nice Italian restaurant. Then we went to an 80s-style band concert and ended up dancing in our seats for the entire show. She felt comfortable enough with me to touch me with her hand several times throughout the show, and I found that her lips were as soft as they were sexy. Yeah, I know. Sexy lips. Anyway, one date turned into 3, and then she asked me to pair her up at a friend's wedding. Danica and her husband Willis were there too, so there were at least 3 people I could talk to. Call me a simpleton, or not. That night we were in bed for the first time, and I was incredibly pleasantly surprised to find that I remembered exactly what to do and how to do it. Remarkably, I was surprised to find that Sybil's taste was markedly different from what I remembered with Lori. It's amazing what your mind is thinking at certain times. A few minutes and 2 more amazing sex sessions later, Sybil was lying almost unconscious on her bed. I don't know about Sybil, but I sometimes wondered if my attraction to her was just a rebound reaction. But the more time I was with her, the more time I wanted to spend with her. For me, it was more than just sex. I needed to know if she felt the same way. So I decided to be sneaky, and I went to my sisters. Danny, it's my turn to ask you a favor. I need to know how Sybil feels about me. Really feels about me. Am I just an outlet for her? I don't think so, and I hope not. But I must confess I'm afraid to ask. Are you really that stupid, brother? That woman is head over heels in love with you. She's given you all of herself, unlike your ex-wife. Trust me, Ronnie, you're her number one and you will be until you say enough. And there's no number two for her. My relationship with the girls had been cool ever since they declared their love for Lori's affair and total disregard for my feelings, but they were fully supportive of my relationship with Sybil, and also happy that I had the courage to get a woman of Sybil's caliber. When I brought them together, they enjoyed each other's company. About 6 months later, we had a small wedding ceremony. Although a few years earlier I had doubted whether I could ever trust my heart to a woman again, Sybil had proven to me repeatedly over the years that not only could I trust her, but that she was without a doubt the protector of my heart. Karma may be a fool, but she's obviously a fool with a bad sense of humor. 10 years after Lori left me for Caleb, he left her to go back to his ex-wife. Karen, my oldest daughter, broke the news to me over the phone one morning. I would like to say I was saddened by this news, since I had forgiven Lori years ago, but that would be a monstrous lie. Sue me, but like most people, I didn't mind gloating a little in the shower. And yes, and probably gloating a little about her while talking to my daughter, too. God, I thought a romance as wonderful as theirs would last more than 10 years. Not exactly the ending your mother envisioned. I'm sure it is, Dad. Karen nodded. A few years later, I stood at the bar, silently sipping my Angel's Envy rye drink, watching the happy guests who I hoped were enjoying the festivities at my oldest daughter's wedding. Someone was standing at my right elbow. I looked over and saw my ex-wife standing there silently, waiting to be noticed. "Do you like it, Lori?" I asked, sincerely hoping that I did. I knew she was somewhat annoyed with Karen, Sybil, and me because she hadn't had to take much part in planning Karen's wedding. I knew that she blamed it mostly on me, somehow deciding that since I paid for it, I was the one making the decisions. Yeah, right. When was the last time a father's opinion was listened to when it came to his daughter's wedding? Karen decided to involve her stepmother in the wedding plans, slightly sidelining her own mother. Karen and Sybil had developed a respectful, loving relationship, while the daughter's relationship with her mother had deteriorated greatly, especially since Lori and Caleb's divorce. You know, if you'd just fought just a little harder for me, all of this could have been our triumph, Lori hummed. I gave her a sardonic smile because I was holding back a laugh. So this is my fault? How did you figure that out, Lori? I asked quietly before taking a sip of my rye whiskey. You practically handed me over to Caleb. You couldn't wait to get rid of me, she hissed. A more deserving man would have put up more resistance. According to you, I was a better man, but obviously not the best because you left me for him. What was there to fight for, Lori? Maybe if you hadn't cheated on me, there would still be something to fight for, but after you broke your vows, I had nothing left that I wanted to keep. You broke my heart and disrespected me. Plus, if you remember, you told me he was your soulmate. How could I argue with that? I loved you. I wanted you to be happy, so I let you go. I shrugged embarrassedly. Yeah, about the happiness thing was an outright lie. She growled, but didn't say anything back. I noticed that the last few years hadn't been kind to Lori. Her face, still quite pretty, was covered in wrinkles and looked severe, to say the least. Her once trim body looked soft and listless. She had gained at least 30 pounds. I looked over to where my wife was socializing with one of our friends. She looked lively, beautiful, and confident, a woman comfortable and content with her place in life. As if guessing, she turned to me and looked straight into my eyes. She smiled. I smiled back. She went back to her conversation. You know you wanted it, Lori. You got him. I'm sorry if he didn't live up to your expectations, I said. I think you should have been more careful what you wished for. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some guests to attend to. It was nice talking to you. We'll continue this sometime, not in this life. The end. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you.